So for the first talk, the speaker came out of Australia, and the last talk in this session, also the speaker came out of Australia. She's going to present as Coombe. She's going to let us know how important crossbreeding is in Australian dairy herds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging around to the very last session. Hopefully I can keep you awake. So why are we looking at crossbreeding? Basically, in Australia, we've historically had a pasture-based dairy industry, and this has predominantly been based around a seasonal calving pattern. So you need that nice, tight calving period. And as you have already heard, we've had declining fertility in Australian herds across the years. And we're just wondering, firstly, are farmers using crossbreeding as an option? But also, assuming I have a little bit of time at the end, I'll talk about how we're then going to look at how we could maybe advise them to use crossbreeding and how best to go about that. So the objective of this study, which I'm presenting today, is the first part of the overall project that we're running, and this is to actually look at what are farmers doing and what have they been doing in Australia. So describe the herd breed structures over a period of time for a subset of herds, and we wanted to look at this, stratifying this by calving system, because there are different systems, and also by region, because the different regions in Australia are quite diverse in the way that they manage their cows. So we collected all the ADHIS, that's the Australian Dairy Herd Improvement Scheme data, for 24 years. It's actually to 2013. And you can see the numbers there. This is a huge data set. I'm extremely fortunate to have Dr. John Morton working with me on this, and he was very instrumental in the in-calf study, which was the big study looking at dairy herd fertility. He's an epidemiologist, and when your epidemiologist says to you, this is really quite a remarkable data set, you go, wow, okay, this must be huge. So it's been pretty amazing. Just to explain about the different systems we've split this into, we have our seasonal herds, which I just described. We do have quite a lot of herds that follow a split calving system or batch calving, which are a separate, different calving periods. And then we have year-round herds as well. And the regions, that just gives you a little map of the different regions of the dairy industry in Australia. So we do have a few farms over here in Perth. The in-calf study, the initial one actually missed Western Australia off, but we've made sure we haven't, because we'll get in trouble if we do. But the majority of the industry is down here in Victoria, and that is the predominantly seasonal calving area historically anyway. Now, this is a bit of a complicated slide, which I have actually simplified, believe it or not. But this is how we classified the herd breed structures, okay? So, and this is all in the abstract if you want to go and have a look. I'm not going to spend an enormous amount of time on this because otherwise I'll run out. But basically, by looking at, it was the percentage of calvings in a given year that were purebred, we either went down the purebred arm or we went down the crossbred arm, essentially. Then they're split by how many have some calvings that are crossbred, and they sort of become purebred herd with a few crossbreds, okay? Or if you've gone down the crossbred arm, you're looking at the 2-year-olds. We decided that because a lot of farmers might keep the F1 heifer from the Jersey bull, for example, but then not bother mating with her later, it was only going to be the 2-year-olds that were crossbred and having calves that showed that the farmers were systematically crossbreeding, okay? So from looking at that and the proportions that were 2 breeds, we had the more serious 2-breed crossbreeding herds or the less serious 2-breed crossbreeding herds, and then obviously the ones that had 3 breeds. And so this was how we then characterised the different herds. So this is the result. And so this is the whole 23 years. Now, before I get asked the question, no, we haven't done stats on this, so we can't say whether any of the changes over time are significant or not yet. So this just shows you the trend quite nicely graphically. But as you can see, these are the purebred herds, the blues at the bottom here. Those that were purebred but had a few crossbreds, it looks to me like they've reduced in number over time. And then our two-breed proportions have increased. And obviously, it looks like, to me, the three-breed herds have increased in numbers as well, or proportionally. Now, this splits it by the different regions that I talked about. So we sort of expected that those more intensive dairy regions where they were maybe using feed pads more or they were using irrigation more, that they would have more purebred herds and that the crossbreds would be more in the traditional sort of pasture-based regions. And sorry that the blue has been chopped off here. So the blue along the bottom is the purebred again, okay? And Western Australia, you can see predominantly they're purebred herds, okay? But this also, what we've done here is actually split it from the first sort of decade of our results to the second decade, or it's actually 13 years for the second period, to just see how that changed over the two periods. So that gives you sort of the overview. What we then did was this is a graph that basically shows what is that change, percentage change between that first period of time and the second period of time. Okay, what we were really surprised with, because anecdotally the people I talk to in Tasmania say, hey, loads of our farms are crossbred. Now remember that this is just herd testing. This is just data from the herd testing farms. So there may have been a lot of farms missed that weren't herd testing, but we were really shocked that the Tasmanian farms seemed to increase less in terms of their proportions of crossbreds over those two time periods compared to our Victorian herds and even compared to, say, the Queensland herds. So it shows that at least over those two time periods, farmers seem to have been increasing in their crossbreeding proportions. And this shows by calving pattern. So these are the seasonal calving herds, okay, for that first decade and then the second decade. So you've got your purebreds again along the bottom. As you can see, it does look like less of them are just keeping a few crossbreds. They're either deciding to stay purebred or they're going to crossbred. So we've got an increase here in the seasonal, but actually a bigger increase in the split calving herds to crossbreds. And interestingly, they all seem to, there seems to be a bigger increase, or a bigger proportion in that second time period of herds that are using three breeds as well. So, in conclusion, for this first section of the study, the most common herd breed structures were still the single breed purebred herd and the two breed crossbreeding herd that was the less serious category. What I should have mentioned was that for all those graphs, we actually clumped all the two breed herds together and also all the pure breed herds together, because we had also split the purebreds into those that were single breed purebred or dual breed purebred, so those that had, for example, Holstein and Jersey herds. Okay, so just briefly, so there has been an increase in crossbreeding over time, but it looks like the degree of that uptake has actually been very regional, and that there's been less uptake in the year-round herds compared with the seasonal or the split. And this was actually pretty much what we expected. But what we want to do next, and we are in the process of looking at the moment, is to actually look at the performance, obviously, of the different breeds. We want to be able to tell farmers, is it worth it? Yes, some of them seem to be taking on crossbreeding, but is it worth it, and what's the best way to go about it? So we want to specifically look at the effects of the breed on the two breed backcross versus bringing in that third breed animal. So a lot of farmers that we've spoken to have said, well, you know, where do I go after the F1? You know, do I go to the back cross and therefore lose some of the heterosis that I've gained, or do I bring in a third breed? And we don't have the answer for that, really. So that's the next thing we're going to look at, and obviously we'll look at production, cell count, repro performance, so all the in-calf parameters, and also longevity of those cows. And we have all that. We have the data for a significant proportion of those herds, so we're pretty confident we'll get some really good results out of this. And also to look at the changes in reproductive performance over time between those breeds. So, you know, are they declining in fertility anyway, or has it actually boosted the reproductive performance? The next thing is to try and survey farmers. Again, anecdotally, we hear that some farmers try it, but then don't like handling the crossbred cows, or don't like the difference in size between in the herd, and just all these anecdotal comments that we get. And we want to do a survey to actually assess whether these are true or not. And so we want to look at their perceived advantages or disadvantages of crossbreeding, and also those that aren't crossbreeding, why wouldn't they try it? Is it just because they're like dog breeders and they like their black and white cows, or are there real other considerations that are stopping them from necessarily looking at it? And what are the barriers? And then finally, we would like to use an economic model which Richard Shepherd has already produced to actually compare that two-breed animal and its backcross with the three-breed animal, so that we can actually say, financially this could be a viable option, whichever. I have a gentleman-womanly bet with my supervisor, Michael Pyman, over which one of these might win, but you'll have to wait and see who wins that. So, and obviously we'll compare this to the purebred as well. I love this picture. I just Googled crossbred picture and this one came up, so yeah, thanks to Hordes. So obviously I have some thanks. Dr. Pyman, he was one of my supervisors on my PhD, and it was his mission to make sure that I had a job after my PhD. So thank you, Michael, for all the help you've given me to get established with this project. Dr. John Morton, as I mentioned, is a veritable genius, and so without him I'd just be utterly lost. David Beggs, I had so much data that I couldn't even open the files in any kind of normal program, so he's written a database for me to extract all my data. Obviously ADHIS for the data, and Dairy Australia, who have funded the project. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any question? What's your stake in the bet? Which one is better?
I think I like the idea of the three-breed.
Yeah?
Yeah. If it's done properly and systematically, yeah.
How would you take account of within-breed variation in your crossbreeding?
We are going to use sire merit in our analysis. So yeah. Because one of the problems, Michael did his PhD looking at the Holstein Jersey cross, but one of the problems was that a lot of the sires were the Jersey bull from the paddock, and they weren't necessarily good genetic merit sires.
Yeah.
So
there's often the difficulty if you select the Holstein, they select the top Holstein, but often they look for the other breed and buy another breed without even knowing what it was selected for. So okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
So that's the end of the session. I think the closing ceremony is upstairs in the auditorium, but I don't like you to leave before thanking the people who went with the microphones and spent all the time with the translations. But I think they did a very good job in organizing this session and helping out with all the technical facilities. And they are also your students who happened to do this, so thank you very much. And I wish you a safe trip home then. Thank you.